someone that consumes digital media through a console, a PC, enjoys playing it by myself, and also gets something from playing this media with other people. That is all I identify as a gamer. If I'm a little more specific, I, as a gamer, hope for certain things from the medium rather. I hope that we'll get, more complex characters. I hope that we'll get interesting storylines that we haven't seen before, that there is innovation. That is not objective, though. That is my own subjective, what I want from this thing I really enjoy. And then more specifically, RPG gamer, things like that. That is the closest thing I come to an identity of a gamer. And apparently, in popular media and in the subcultures that really enjoy gaming, they have a very different idea of what it means to be a gamer. It's been unfolding the last few weeks across the internet, across the world. Patrick O'Rourke, if you could, because I know you've been covering this. First off, what is this concept of the gamer identity? What have a lot of people, at least the loudest people, have been reappropriating that title to mean?
I think it's a really complicated situation, I guess. First of all, there's the whole Gamergate hashtag that they've created. And a lot of it sort of circles back to the relationships that people that write about games or gaming journalists have with developers. And that's something that this whole thing is sort of focused in on. And it stemmed from the controversy over a prominent indie developer allegedly sleeping with a game developer. And I won't go into the specifics of it because I really don't think it's something totally worth talking about.
It's not appropriate.
Not like it was
Who
this
cares,
thing.
though?
It was like this thing
cares?
that got totally blown out of proportion, right? And people sort of twisted that and turned it into this vendetta against, I guess, journalists being corrupted in terms of writing about games. And I think that's something that's worth talking about, but not in the context that people presented it in at that time.
Identifying themselves as fighting these social justice warriors, as they put it in that way. And I think the most insidious thing about this is that those people who identified themselves as gamers were not very inclusive of those actual games, of what they enjoy. And that ties into the very popular and highly controversial tropes versus women in video games, which is done by Anita Sarkeesian. She's gotten her Kickstarter campaign, or was it Indiegogo? One of these campaigns.
I think it was Kickstarter.
Yeah. A bunch of money to make a lot of videos about, and, get her research team to examine this particular media and this particular genre and see how women are represented within it. It's been out for a little while. I think she's made 6 videos, something close to that.
Yeah, I think it's about 6, 7, something like that.
And in gaming in particular, it's very complex. But what are some examples of?
I mean, she goes into a lot of different things and basically picks apart games and shows the different ways the games depict women in a negative light. And I guess as being someone who's played games my whole life, it's kind of eye-opening to see this kind of academic perspective that games are being examined from. And it sort of makes you realize how poor women are actually depicted in games. And I think as someone who's played games my whole life, it hasn't often occurred to me that that's a problem. So I think in a way that makes her channel really important.
And I think not only, because again, I agree entirely with the findings, but the connections from those that she's making, other people are making, is an amazing thing to discuss. Of what you take from the idea that a certain gender is not being adequately represented in gaming. And then the subsets of questions that come from that. Who is to blame? Is it us as consumers because we don't want these sort of characterizations? Is it developers who are lazy? Is it the economic forces that say you have to have a mid-30s rugged-looking dude with a half haircut? That kind of sounds like this when he's playing his games.
Wow.
Is it an economic force in that way? So all of that is such an interesting and varied discussion of something we really enjoy. The one thing we shouldn't say is, oh, this isn't anything, stop talking about it. And that seems to be the general point, the general almost consensus of this culture of gamers. And it's kind of disgusting. It's in a way anti-intellectual. It's in a way, it's anti-critical. And it's so easy to criticize and dislike Anita Sarkeesian, because she's so unlikable just in terms of how she presents herself. She's not affable at all. She's cold and in some ways making very harsh judgments on things that are very, very important to a lot of people. So it's easy to then just immediately jump on her with any sort of nuanced issue that, she's not paying attention to particular games enough, or she's taking these things out of context.
A lot of people,
and therefore it's incorrect.
Yeah, a lot of people also say that she picks specific aspects of games and just focuses on that. And I think that's something she's addressed in some of the newer videos. She does talk about games that she feels and her team feels depict women in a better way. So yeah.
Well, and I think absolutely, you don't necessarily have to disagree with everything that she's saying, but the idea that so many people are full of this fervent rage that someone would suggest that maybe women should be depicted a little more fuller in games is emblematic, I think, of this culture of gamers. This idea of who gamers actually are, at least the loudest voices in the gaming community, are not people I want to be identified as.
I think what else is interesting is this sort of feminist critique that she does is something that's common in movies, it's in books, and these same people that hate her videos are the same people that want video games to be seen more than just games. And that's sort of this kind of criticism and stuff like this elevates the platform as a medium. And so there's kind of this
it's conflict. The same. I like it too because it's the same evolution that every other medium went through.
Exactly.
It's the same thing that didn't allow black people to be on stage and on screen. I was talking off air that a local newspaper here has every article they've almost ever written cataloged. And there's literally an article that says, should we let the blacks on stage? A criticism of vaudevillian arts, of fervently saying this could hurt what we have if we allow a certain people to be on. And we hear that now, and it's laughable, obviously.
Yeah.
So the idea that some of these criticisms are so outrageous, I think, is just a measure of time. Once we start to see that, maybe it isn't a nice thing to have the same damsel in distress trope in every single game, that women are always depicted as at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's the thing that confuses me too, is I don't see how having a different kind of story being told with better female characters, I don't see how that makes gaming bad. If you look at The Last of Us, for example, Ellie is an awesome character, super interesting, totally different than anything we've ever seen before. And I think that's a perfect example of a game taking a different kind of approach. And I think she examined the game in one of her videos, and she did find problems with it, as she does with most games. But it's an example of a game that's sort of more progressive in doing things in a better way.
And it's a great thing to have that, the idea that, because of this now developers are going to start making games that people don't like, that are going to force this feminist agenda down our throats, is just laughable, because I've talked to so many developers that make games that I respect and love. The people a few years ago that made the great games at BioWare, the people at Obsidian that made those great Fallout games that were compelling and interesting and had these thick narratives. They just want to make great stories. And they're smart enough and good enough storytellers to know that a great story needs to have great female characters in it. They don't want to push to market forces and say, women need to be depicted in this way. I think it's a mixture of that idea of market forces pushing in a certain way that are suggesting that we need a certain, I want to say, almost template of how you make a game, and lazy developers that just believe that you can kind of make a story similar to how we've made it before. It's sticking with old Western or samurai tropes and thinking that they still work in a modern day. I think those together, unfortunately, leave a lot to be desired in a genre that we really enjoy. And it's made so much worse when we have conniving, angry, prepubescent, that's a hard word to say, voices coming out of the woodwork, screaming at us and making me sick, and making me hope that, this should have happened years ago, that there should have been a better depiction of women. There's nothing that proves the need for tropes versus women than to see how it's been received.
I think that's probably the best point you could possibly make. It's the reaction that people have given to it simply proves why it needs to exist.
And what has been a bit of the reaction, Patrick O'Rourke, for people that have not been listening?
It's pretty scary stuff. I mean, I think Sarkeesian got death threats. They did this process called doxing, where they found her address and all of her personal information, released it on the internet, and she was getting death threats and people like saying horrible things that they were going to come to her house.
Raped her family and all.
Like, absolutely disgusting
because
things.
she said, Princess Peach shouldn't be a princess. We should all have strong women. And because of that, I'm going to rape your family. Well, it's laughable.
It's just the way you said it.
That's the thing. It should be presented like that because it's so ridiculous. People who even remotely defend this way of thinking, and there's this few douchebags that started the Sarkeesian effect that are trying to suggest that there is a huge conspiracy between this woman and greater gaming as a whole.
Yeah, like game journalists and indie developers as well. And they made like this whole complicated mind map of all these weird connections. And it's so strange.
And our very own Patrick O'Rourke is on one of those mind maps.
Yeah, but what the best part of that too was that I'm like on this little bubble in the corner of the mind map with basically no connections to anything, which is true. That's what I am. But the whole, but the whole point of it was to make all these connections and create this conspiracy that doesn't really exist. And simply me being on there proves.
How the hell did they like?
Well, here's the idea. Like, just to focus back on the core issue of tropes versus women, I think we can all agree, everyone here at least, that we want to have games that have better characters.
Yeah.
Across the board. Yeah, and it seems to be that already men are getting better written characters. There's more of an abundance of better written male characters than there is of female ones. So obviously, one of the first things you need to do is prop up the female characters. And just, we think of games that have good stories. You think of, in my case, the Dragon Ages, the Mass Effect.
Mass Effect.
They allow you to not only have great experiences with women, but to play as a strong woman that the fact that she is a woman doesn't stop her from doing anything. You were literally are just role playing in that sense. You could have been a man, you could have been a woman. Your Commander Shepard does the same things. Yep. And I think that's a very important feature, to have that option and then in the world meet really strong characters, regardless of their gender. And in this case, there haven't been as many strong female characters, so we should just get more. Like, we play a game like that and we love it. No one is disliking the fact that there's strong women characters. And I don't think anyone ever would.
No. Can you, some examples of just, lead female characters?
There's so few.
I can think of Lara Croft.
Samus.
Samus,
which was at the end of, imagine that.
Guess what, bitches? Who else was I?
Joanna Dark. Diego.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you have to find her.
Oh. Where in the world is she?
I love that game. That's my favorite. Perfect Dark Woman.
I guess you can say Elizabeth in BioShock Infinite for a
little bit.
No, but
you're not. Okay, yeah,
for
the
a little
other ones.
Bit.
Let's
so
really
few.
there's again as sole leads that aren't hypersexualized and disgusting.
That I just remembered is Ubisoft. The Assassin's Creed for Vita. I forgot what it was called.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking about? Liberation.
Yeah,
it had
the black woman.
Which was kind of cool to see.
Oh, it was a fun game too. That's one of the games I actually enjoyed. Ubisoft is good for it because they also had Child of Light, where you play that little girl that's flying around. That was the most beautiful game I've ever played in my life.
That's it's
just basically crying for like 45 minutes because it's the prettiest thing you've ever seen.
Which it's kind of a shame because Ubisoft, I can't remember the specifics, but there was a developer that answered a question really horribly about possible female characters in a game, and they got all that negative press. But
they actually do some great stuff.
They're one of the more progressive companies.
They're big enough and they know enough that we need to have good characters that allow for a lot of great things. Now, there's three men sitting around this table here, three boys, depending on who you ask. Playing as a woman as your lead, has that affected your role-playing experience? I will start, and I'll say, if I have the option, will usually choose a male protagonist because when I'm role-playing, it's usually a representation of myself. You're playing a role that's kind of close to you. That being said, playing the first Dragon Age again as a female noble was one of the most interesting and varied sort of experiences because as a female noble, I was able to do things in the narrative that weren't open to me because there was a rigid class system that worked with that particular gender. Mass Effect, I tried doing as a female shepherd and experiencing differently and getting like those romance options with like Garrus, these characters you really like. Yeah. And I will never do it the first time if I have the option to. But I like the fact that I have a chance to, again, and I have taken advantage of that. I've actually used that opportunity to play as a woman, to role play as a woman. And it has given me a different sort of experience. For you guys, let's start with Shaggy Davidson. Playing as a lady. If you have the option.
I don't see any difference really. I don't even really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I just try to get through the game and like, okay, you obviously know it's a woman, but I don't really see any differences at all. Like it's still like they can still do the same things as men, especially Lara Croft in Tomb Raider. Like she can do things that are unimaginable. Like it's unbelievable what she can do in that game. And I could see men doing that too. You know, it's just I don't really see it. I just
There's one other thing that she can do in this game that maybe isn't the most progressive. Okay, so that is a montage of the latest Lara Croft game and all of the moans and screams of this otherwise, I think, very well written and powerful character. Even then, this is kind of my point, even then when we have a character that is well written, that is powerful, she still needs to have her clothes come off, cleavage still needs to show, and she needs to have an orgasm when she's getting stabbed. Who is that for? You know, we were talking off air. How did that experience of playing as Lara Croft really resonate with you?
I mean, I had a lot of fun playing the game. It was cool to play as a strong female character, but I found the whole like moaning stuff off-putting. Like, why does that actually need to be there? Like,
it's because it's so immersed with the violence too. Like that was a ridiculously violent game. When you died, there was boulders falling on her head. She gets choked to death by a dirty Russian.
Branches are going through her throat.
Oh man!
In a way, it was almost like sexualizing the violence, I guess, which was also kind of creepy.
It was off-put, especially because we're not very good at games.
No.
So except for Shaggy Dave, and we die a lot, So we had to hear her with her orgasm death moans. Like 30 times in a row. I remember one point where I literally died 30 times in a row.
I died 30 times in a row. You know where it was? It was on that stupid bridge, jumping across. It was like, and there's 1,000 guys shooting at you. And I jumped off the building, and I didn't know you're supposed to hit X and get the pickaxe. I hung onto the bottom of the thing. Where the hell am I supposed to go? I fall in the water, dead. Fall in the water, dead.
And this,
over and over again.
It's quit.
I think that even then, we all agree it didn't improve our experience to have this extra sort of femininity.
But it is cool to play as a female character.
I think we agree that it works for that storyline. Absolutely. Like I preferred that to the Nathan Drakes, the Uncharted.
Yeah. Okay. I never played those.
Yeah. I mean, in like Assassin's Creed Liberation, I didn't finish the game, but I played a lot of it, and I had fun playing as a female character. It was like a different dynamic in the game, a different story. It was just built differently, and that made it.
I like it when games are able to take into account that you are playing as a different gender and try to maybe cater the story slightly differently. You know, I'm thinking of, I just had it on the tip of my tongue too. Unfortunately. Assassin's Creed with Black Flag, when you played the DLC, you played like the slave story, and his race was very much impactful for the narrative. And I think when we see more of that, when gender and race and things like that really impact the narrative and change things around you, you're going to see characters by definition having to be more robust. Yeah. And currently we don't have that. Like where in Call of Duty, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a female soldier usually in your team?
Yeah, now they introduce you can be a female. They did it in Ghosts in multiplayer.
But not it's in multiplayer, right?
But not in the campaign, no.
What would be the harm? What would be the harm?
Campaign's generic white guy number 5.
Yeah. Of Brian, what's his name? Brian Bloom, who has the most amazing voice ever. Just saying.
Steve.
Roger. No, Steve
Bloom.
Who's the other guy I really like? I forget his name, but his name's Brian. His first name is Brian. He was in the A-Team as one of the bad guys, and he voices...
Liam Neeson.
God damn you.
Let's look this up.
We're gonna look it up, folks. I know this is important, but
I'm looking up Brian Call of Duty. No, not Call of Curry. Call of Duty.
No, it's a
Brian.
It's an important piece.
Are you sure his name's Brian?
Yes.
Brian Hoffman?
No, it's not Brian Hoffman.
Okay, this is, I don't know, it just says here.
It may not be Brian.
It says Brian trolling on
Brian Bloom, it's his name, yeah.
Okay, well there's Steve and Brian. Okay, maybe they're brothers.
Steve, yeah, Brian Bloom. Of course. He is voiced like every single generic white dude. Hi, yeah, this is Brian. Even better than that, though, just like even raspier coming in. Roger, 15.
He looks generic, too.
Yeah. And it's all like that, you know. And there's enough of his. You can see it. He plays like 15 different protagonists.
I see this here. He's in Batman.
He's a good actor, I agree, but he doesn't need to play 15 different protagonists.
Yeah, okay.
He's the voice of Batman too?
No. What the hell is this? Oh, he was Cyborg in Lego Batman the movie.
He's BJ in Wolfenstein. Like he's played
Pike in the A-Team. Pike in the A-Team.
He's in Tarzan.
Is he?
He's in Tarzan.
Anyways, we're getting off.
I like this.
I imagine you would. But the whole point is, we were able to show that this one voice actor played 15 or so different protagonists in the gaming industry.
I'm just looking at it. It says additional voices, like in every single slot.
Yeah, because all we need is the, more kind of deeper white guy voice. Hi. Oh, get ready for this. Why do we need that? Why can't we have a more varied cast?
He needs a paycheck, that's why.
Well, he needs a paycheck, but does it hurt to have a female soldier in Call of Duty?
They said they did it. Well, they did it in Ghosts. I don't know if they're going to do it in the new campaign. They might. Because
what's the stat that we have with looking at? I believe Arts Technica was able to gather it.
The amount of
the demographics of.
I think it's the Entertainment Software Association's latest survey was like 48%.
48%, and if we look at the actual leads and how many of them are female, it's got to be less than a few percent.
Yeah, it's very low.
And that number is not even like Facebook games or smartphone games like people think. It's like everything.
Yeah.
Does it count for the Kim Kardashian game?
Well, that's the role model. That is the representation that women get. They don't get, like the hard, powerful, important women. They have goddamn Kim Kardashian telling you that you shouldn't be buying those earrings.
That's super cute. What about Catwoman in Arkham City?
That was a lot of fun, but even that was sexualized because it was a cartoon. Okay. But the whole point is, we all agree here that we should have better representation
for sure
of women in gaming and just characters in gaming, because I'm tired of generic voice number 7 leading the charge. Voices? Stop additional voices. There you go. Stop it now. # stop additional voices.
Diablo you could play
create the new campaign.
Yeah.
There we go.
New campaign.
Because what's the necessity? Like I really, everyone's trying to innovate. It's such a competitive field. Why again are we all trying to build for the middle? Of everyone needs to have white guy voice here with 6 different guns firing and killing the same dark looking gray things again and again.
I think that's one of the things that scares the people that identify as gamers is that this medium has grown beyond just being targeted to like teenage boys. It's now for everybody, right?
And that's the big thing too. I understand that feeling of gaming beforehand was just for me and a few other dudes and no one else really liked it. And that was cool. This was my thing. Now I've had girlfriends that enjoy it, teachers that have liked it. What the hell is this? This is my sort of medium.
Especially if you want to appeal to gamer girls, because there's a lot of girls that play games as well. Especially
that's what the stat we had. 48% are females of a certain age to have over, I believe. It's an age.
Whatever.
I'm not sure what the specific age is.
We have it here somewhere.
Between 0 and 100.
Between 0 and 100. But the whole point is that the actual people who are consuming this medium are not driving how it's being built. No. And that is not a good way to create art, is to not have the consumer in mind. It's a bad way to create it. And a big part of that has to do with characters not being represented in the way that they should. Now, in terms of gaming journalism, what are you doing?
I was just looking at other female characters. I just saw Miss Pac-Man. Just laughed. Does it count?
No, it doesn't. It's Pac-Man with a bow tie on her head.
It's one of like the 4 female characters you can find
that you could go to. It's Kim Kardashian, Lara Croft, that Zero Dark 30, and Miss Pac-Man,
and Xena Warrior Princess, the Talisman, and Fate.
All right. So gaming journalism. Do you trust? Oh, actually, before we get into that, I just want to talk quickly about, again, we talked about the culture of gamers.
Yeah.
Dave, give us some insights into this.
Okay.
Multiplayer. Mm-hmm. You played some multiplayer games.
I play a lot of multiplayer.
So you have heard some vile, hideous, hateful, morally reprehensible racial slurs on a close to daily basis.
Yeah, I don't want to say a lot of them, but
no, but let's not do any of that.
A lot of that going on.
Now, we talked about this off air.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you operate in that medium? When you're playing multiplayer, how do you act?
Depends on the mood I'm in. Like, I was really bad back in the day. I would talk so much crap and just bash kids, and just, especially on Call of Duty. Call of Duty is one of the worst experiences in gaming history. Okay? Just these kids, they can't be more than 6, and they're playing these games and they're saying, I'm gonna rape your mom, I'm this and that, and it's just, and you're thinking, really?
It almost becomes commonplace, right? It almost becomes like natural to hear that.
Yes.
While you're playing this sort of game.
And you get messages, especially on Xbox, you get voice messages and just text messages, and it's just, you suck, I'm gonna kill you, and this and that, and I'm gonna do this to your mom, and
a lot of mom.
A lot of mom stuff. I don't know why. Like, okay, mom stuff was in grade 7. Okay, I guess it's still going on.
But the whole point is, you even identify that this is morally reprehensible.
This is very.
And you would never, if you're walking on the street, say this, or even any outside. You would never even text me that, and we text each other terrible things.
We do.
And you wouldn't even.
I don't think we've ever texted anything about moms.
No, because moms are sacred.
Leave the mothers out of this.
But the whole point is, we have a very aggressive relationship, and even you and I don't say things that terrible.
No, well,
not to that extent. Come on,
no, not to that extent. Okay, yeah, we'll say that. Not to,
and these are just strange little boys.
They're just little boys,
and this is the insanity.
And it's okay if you do good. It's tough because there's really no argument. If you do really good in a game of Call of Duty and you're pumped, like say you're doing a search and destroy game and you're going to 7 rounds and you kill the other team and you're the last guy and you get clutch, you kill 3 guys in a row, I will let you go and trash talk me saying, hey, you killed me, right? All right, bro, you did it. But if I'm the guy and I kill everybody, I will go insane.
See, this is okay. So you still do that, but you still recognize.
I don't say anything about moms. It's so.
But you say ridiculous things.
I do. Oh, I do want to believe.
And back in, as you put it, back in the day, it was even worse.
Yeah,
it's still worse. Man.
I'll admit to that too. Like, like when I was a kid, there's some pretty bad things I would say to people on the internet when I was playing like Halo and things like that.
Yeah.
But like you grow up, you realize that you don't need to act like that. Like it's,
no, there's no reason for it. But I guess it just happens.
It's
like,
when you're in that medium. It's the issue that people who are in that medium and playing that game take that attitude outside of it and maybe don't understand the ramifications of talking to human beings this way.
It's the anonymity, really. And it's the fact that they're kids too.
I know, and I don't.
And we shouldn't let the loudest, most obnoxious and hateful voice be the representation of what a gamer is, when all it really means is that we all happen to enjoy consuming the same type of media.
Yeah.
We also most of us enjoy movies as the same sort of thing. We shouldn't let the most hateful people who enjoy movies represent what it means to be a moviegoer. All in agreement?
I agree.
High five, everyone. Okay. Beyond that, though, so that's obviously we need better representation of women in gaming. We need better representation of just characters in gaming. There needs to be better characterization. In terms of actual journalism, though, and the validity of one organization versus another, and maybe the prejudices that could be involved with one. How far do you think that extends, Patrick? Or what do you think there is collusion?
I've been doing this for I think 5 years, 6 years now, and I every time I look online, I see people talk about how they think that like this review score was bought and things like that, and I've never seen anything like that happen.
Has anyone ever given you money?
No one has even offered me money. Nothing like that has ever happened.
Someone
to me.
needs to offer Patrick
Sounds familiar,
money.
doesn't it?
Yes.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But
Nice one, Dave.
but granted, I'm not like super popular or
Yeah.
anything. But even through people that I know people that work for IGN or Kotaku or whatever, I've never heard of anything like that happening. But there still seems to be this narrative that people think that there's this underground culture of journalists taking all kinds of money to give like the next Call of Duty a 9 or to give the next Call of Duty a 4 because EA paid them or something like that.
There's a funny meme I saw. It's like IGN, Call of Duty, 10 out of 10. Everything else, 3.
And the other thing people don't realize too is it's not the publication that gives that score out or that review. It's the individual reviewer, right?
Yeah.
So say one person reviewed Modern Warfare 2 and they're like, this game is awesome. Then the next person, someone totally different, reviews Modern Warfare 3. They didn't like it. But people don't realize that it's a different author of both those reviews.
And you've been given, and so have I, but you've been given a lot of free stuff to review. Have you ever felt as if that you need to be less critical of something because it's been given to you for free?
I don't think so. I mean, I always try to be aware of that when I'm reviewing a game and like consciously make sure that I don't think of that. But I can see from like a fan's perspective, because I don't think a lot of people realize that as journalists, we get these games for free.
Yeah.
We go on these trips and stuff like that for free.
Well,
like,
you get to go.
Patrick gets to go. We have to beg and plead, and then sometimes like, radio, what's that? And then they'll let us go. But for anyone that has a computer, we're still available online, folks. But I agree, and that's the interesting thing, that people are aware and assume that there is some collusion. And from our experiences, I have never felt compelled to give special treatment to any sort of organization because they're giving me the advantage of having something early. In fact, usually when I have received something early, it's an opportunity to be more critical because I have more time with the game. So I have more opportunity to examine it and, find out all the issues so that by the time you all get to play, I can really say, okay, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with this.
That's why some PR companies don't send out the games until like the day it comes out or the day before it comes out, so that you haven't had time to play it, right? So there is weird stuff that happens like that. And I mean, like I said before, a lot of people think that like IGN and things like that, they pay to go to like Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show and stuff like that. But as far as I know, publishers pay for those trips.
Oh yeah, if we are getting some advantage, I can't even imagine what an IGN person would be getting from any sort of developer.
And the thing is, if publishers and companies and stuff like that didn't pay for that, even companies like that wouldn't be able to afford to go on those trips. Because I think people have this assumption that people in the media, especially that write about games, make a lot of money.
Oh, no.
So, yeah.
Not even remotely. I think all of these criticisms are so mute, too, because once you listen to any sort of critic and you purchase that product, if you think they are diametrically incorrect, then you will not refer to their analysis again. It's as simple as that. So someone who is doing that will be found out immediately that they are being entirely biased, and that's not what they should be doing. So the idea that economics affect things, I do understand, because I have felt a little compelled, not perhaps to be less critical, but to talk about it first if I'm dealing with a publisher that hasn't given me a lot of information beforehand. He'll be the first like if we're on our show, we'll have a feature with them first because we haven't had them on before and we want them to give us more stuff so we can talk about it. So we get that opportunity again. The things I do think are a little suspect sometimes are the role of PR people in this industry, of what they represent and what they do. They're usually the most obsequious and sweetest human beings you'll ever meet. They just explode happiness. A lot of them, though, were previous journalists, and a lot of them understand they're there to control a message.
Yep.
And in a lot of ways, what we're trying to do is adversarial to them. We need to get the information out that they don't want us to know. I remember when we had our Thief interview, and the guy looked at his PR rep, the developer said, okay, he doesn't want me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. And it was one of the most compelling and interesting things we got to hear about something we like.
You rarely see that.
And we rarely get to see that because everyone's trying to control the message, which they have a right to do. This is their economic investment. But if we, who really love this content, want to get to the meat and potatoes of real criticism, sometimes the economic interests need to be removed to that. You get a lot of that after the fact, but the relationships between PR representatives and journalists, I think sometimes can be a little bit troubling. But even when I am worried, I can just refer to the content. So if I see a review that I don't trust, then I no longer trust it. They're gone forever. So anything that you risk by being biased is too great than just perhaps, bringing your own analysis to the table. That's what I found, at least. What are some of the issues? What are some of the insider hints that you can tell us?
In terms of like writing about games, or
well, just the journal of what it looks like, the coverage of gaming.
I think what a lot of people don't realize is sometimes how difficult it is to get review copies of games,
man.
especially when you're Canadian. A lot of these American...
What's Canada?
Yeah, exactly.
Where is it?
Especially when it shows up that I work for Canada.com. They're like, what is this, a government website that reviews games?
Listen, radio, why do you guys need to talk about games? You don't have pictures. Oh my God.
I know.
By the way, you can find all our video on Video Game Sophistry on YouTube. Please continue.
I think a lot of people think that these games just like land on people's desks. They just show up. They don't realize the relationships that you have to build with PR people in order to get the game sent to you. Because they have to trust you, right? They're sending this game out to you. Are you going to write about it? Or are you just going to take it, put it on your shelf, not ever say anything
and
about
trade
it?
it in right after.
And trade it in, make a little money.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of, there's a lot of that we have to work hard to get. And it's about reputation as well, not only within the journalist community, but just within the audience that we have. These people, I understand, they're not going to give us anything unless we can say, we can pull 1 million people to listen to what I have to say.
Yeah, you have to have an audience. And I think the other big thing is a lot of people don't realize just how difficult that is sometimes to build that audience and to send like a message out to people.
What do you think about like news ripping?
Like rewriting other stories?
Of just like the basic story will be, there are 15 new DLC maps announced for Destiny. And I will see 1,000 different sites, maybe even more than that, that all they do is just read and rip. It happens sometimes in radio when there is a basic kind of story of like one person shot. Let's keep going. But even then, you take the time to try and do some investigation. You try and get a little more information. And so often I don't see that in gaming.
I think it's like, I don't know. I think it's important. Like, I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah. Why do you do it?
Why do I? With the rips, I guess what I like to do is have a balance, right? So I have to do some of the rips because I need traffic, right? I have numbers. I have to produce content. There's a lot of pressure on journalists these days. Newsrooms are smaller. You have to produce more content. That's part of the deal. So I think it's important to have that balance. Do the rewrites because you have to, even though you might not particularly enjoy them, but also try to add more to them. Put your own spin on it, add your own opinion, add more detail, try to do a better job than the original story.
I see so little of the additional detail.
A lot of the time,
people just like getting the news release and copying it and maybe not even calling the number at the bottom.
A lot of the time on sites, people just, like even big sites, like Destructoid, I see it a lot. They'll post just like a straight news release, just nothing changed, stuff like that. But I think the important thing really is to have a balance. Do those rewrites because you have to do them. And I think they're also informative to your audience. Like if someone only goes to Kotaku, they don't go to Polygon or IGN or whatever, that's their only source of news. They need to see those rewrites because that's the only site that they go to.
I think that's less and less though. I don't think
that's true too.
The people that get their news from one place are not ones that are at the cutting edge of gaming.
Yep, that's true.
Like we would always get it everywhere. So it almost seems like it's, but you're saying because you can look at the numbers, that is stuff that still gets some meat and potatoes.
Yeah,
right?
Personally, I try to do a balance. Like I said, I have to do these rewrites because it's part of my job, but I also produce like original content, original opinion pieces, that kind of thing. And I try to do a balance between the two.
It's an interesting thing for us, I would say middle of the road, right? In terms of coverage. You have a little bit more because people love you. And one of the big things we try and do is to almost sell our content, our actual journalism, when we get something interesting, when we get, because this is an interview-based program, and we try and push it to other bigger sites. When we can get something on an IGN, or we had with some of our, what was it? The
Watch Dogs? Was it?
No, Watch Dogs. It was Mass Effect. A lot of our Mass Effect stuff.
Commander Shepard.
Was,
I remember that.
Game Informer.
You guys were all over the place.
It was huge for that. And that was exciting for us because it allows our content, which I think stands on its own, to be shared in a much larger range. I just think it's interesting that now we're not even trying to find people. We're just trying to get a bit of almost piggybacking on these already established networks.
Yeah.
Do you have to try and do that as well? Do you find that as a part of your strategy?
It comes sort of down to like the 24-hour news cycle. And like I said, smaller newsrooms, less stuff going on. And I think that's also part of that Gamergate thing is the people that play games don't really understand what journalists do.
We don't have the
what
time
it's like,
to be
right?
so colluding. Like there's no, if you ever, again, more, it's the one, Occam's, I forget what it is, one of these razors that says, look first to cock up, than conspiracy. It's much easier, and it's a much simpler answer to why something has gone awry, that someone made a mistake, versus it's a huge collusion.
I see that all the time, so many times.
And there's so often they'll just be, we live in a world of newsrooms. It's laziness, banality, and lethargy. People aren't doing what they're supposed to do. They're just letting it go through. And people are taking that saying, oh my God, there must be some connection there. We can say firsthand, it's not. People are just lazy and stupid. There we go.
Exactly. I see it all the time.
It's an interesting end to this. So again, we want to have, how do we fix that? I guess that's the biggest thing. How do we try to get it so people feel comfortable that the news they're getting isn't from a higher up saying you have to report on this news?
That's above my pay grade. I have no idea how to fix it, to be honest. I don't know. I think about it a lot sometimes, especially because it's a big part of my job. Mm-hmm. And I literally have no idea how to fix it.
Well, if you guys do have some ideas, make sure you send those ideas to, what's your Twitter handle there, Patrick O'Rourke?
At Patrick_O'Rourke.
And of course, we'll have that all up on our site. Burkowski News. What is it? At Burkowski News, I think it is. At VGS_640. Tell us what you think. If you want to know something about the industry, if you want us to tell you a little bit about, we've been to E3, we've been to these sort of events. It is an interesting relationship.
Yeah,
it is an interesting dynamic. I just want to end off here with saying, I think one of the most dangerous things that could be brought to gaming journalism, far more dangerous than the relationships between developers, or rather PR people and journalists. It's when journalism and marketing become blurred lines. One of my most anticipated games of this year is Dragon Age Inquisition. On the Dragon Age official site, they have these interviews, quote unquote, that they posted that are literally the PR people from BioWare talking to people from BioWare. And they're great. They're comprehensive. There's nothing even remotely critical. And it's presented like it's real journalism. And then, because like we talked about, sites are lazy and they got to get the information out quickly.
They just post the video.
They just post the video. Yeah. They do a quick rip. There's no need for them. There's no impetus for them to call up and say, oh, I want to talk to these people. There's no desire whatsoever. And that, I think, is a far bigger issue for our industry than anything else in terms of the developments and creation of gaming journalism.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think the only other big thing that I encounter in terms of like controversy is sometimes I'll write a negative review of a game, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a PR organization that I don't have that great a relationship with. They'll stop talking to me after that negative review of mm-hmm. the game. So I mean, that's never affected the way that I review the game, but sometimes I wonder if other journalists encounter that problem.
Well, we can say firsthand that I have had bad experiences, and you're aware
and
of me saying stuff.
Yeah, for the most part, though.
Fortunately, they, at least in that case, the relationships were mended, and we're able to say that, people are being more professional in that way.
For the most part, PR people are great, especially the ones that are ex-journalists. They understand mm-hmm. your job, and I think that's the biggest problem with the relationship between mm-hmm. PR and journalists is they don't understand our job. Yeah. They don't know that we're supposed to be critical, mm-hmm. that even when you like a game, you're still going to say bad things about it. Like they don't understand
be perfect.
That. Yeah.
In their world, right?
Yeah, it's going to be, they're selling it to make sure it is perfect. And the people who are saying it's perfect shouldn't be the ones who are controlling the message. And that's what it's turning into. It's not a collusion with boyfriends banging journalists and therefore we got a good review. It's not a plague of feminists taking over your deep voice protagonist. It's nothing like that. This is a new medium that's going to become so much more impactful to everyone's life in the next few decades. And why don't we see it where there are strong, powerful characters that are nuanced and interesting? Why don't we have it where we get to find a lot of different sources talking about one thing? Our information doesn't just come from the rip and reads of IGN. I have a dream, folks, and it is for a new Dragon Age. I'm Andy Burkowski.
I'm Shaggy Dave.
I'm Patrick O'Rourke.
And this, of course, is the end of our segment.